I often tell the teachers that I work with that technology is an amazing tool, but technology is not always the best tool. So screen time in the classroom, it's important for teachers to use it as a tool for curriculum delivery and for extending knowledge and things you couldn't do without technology. For a good example of that is music composition. Kids do not know how to play a trumpet and the drums and an electric guitar and a harp, but they can open GarageBand and they can orchestrate an entire composition and have it play back for them. So that's a use of technology where technology is the best tool instead of 20 years of music instruction before they can write this music. But sometimes it's also good to know that, sometimes a paper and pencil or some good old poster board or some Play-Doh is better than the technology. So how best can students utilize and leverage the technology to communicate their learning and to educate others. So that's kind of how I approach technology and computing in the classroom. But it's also an amazing tool to practice logical thinking. Liz mentioned coding earlier, and coding is an amazing way of thinking. It's debugging, it's problem solving, it's persistence, it's perseverance, all of those really important things that we want our students to leave our schools with. Technology is a good tool to help.
I work mostly with middle and high school students, and mostly with high school students. So my answer's focused on them. What I love about technology in the classroom is all of a sudden it starts to get loud and the energy changes. And as educators, sometimes I think it's like, but also we realize that is active learning. And I feel that there's a huge opportunity that educators have in managing screen time by actually leaning in and giving the students an opportunity to use their technology that actually furthers the assignment or the work. So making assignments for your homework on Twitter, or using it as a personalized learning tool, or there's just so many different ways that we can say, where are you guys, and where do we as a school or we as an educator feel comfortable, and is it a tool that I could use to bring them back in. Just one quick example. We were working with a classroom that was having their students stand up and do presentations, and we had a polling technology that was added in, and the students were giving peer reviews that were anonymous with their phones on who was giving the best presentation. And those kinds of moments, you realize that you're not having to worry about what they're doing on the phone, because the students are excited about putting their piece of the puzzle into that use of the phone, as opposed to just sitting back and listening to Jill's presentation, then you're bored. Now you get to be active.
So I think as educators, it's important that we be tech savvy so that we can leverage the tools available to us to facilitate learning and working with technology. And I think it's more important now than ever, because when this generation of kids graduates from college and they're looking for a job, there'll be more jobs in computer science than any other field, and in every state and every industry. And it'll be a whole lot easier for them to be successful at work if they have a strong background working with computers and using computer science. And so like you were saying, how the energy in the room changes when a kid learns to code things like an app or an animation or a website. I think it's great that as educators we can empower students to create wonderful things and really help them learn how the world around them works. And computer science is a skill that can be used at any age. So students can use it today to write their first book report, or they can use it in college to build a website for a fledgling business to help pay some of their textbook or student rent.
One of the important things I think for educators to remember is you need to teach them the tools, but then you need to kind of give them free rein and let them use the appropriate tools. So very often with my students, I'll say, your objective is to learn X, Y, Z. You can demonstrate that however you'd like. You figure out how to show me you've learned something. It could be a poster board, it could be a Google slideshow, it could be an animation that you code in Scratch, it could be a song that you write, it could be something that you design in 3D print and can explain to me. So however you choose to communicate your knowledge, that's what we need our students to learn, because when they get into college and into the job market, they need to be able to pick the best tool for for the job.
I'd love to hear your guys' ideas on how to balance the excitement and engagement that they get from the technology, but then bring them back to whatever the curriculum or learning objective is, and how do you do that tightrope dance?
I think self-reflection is a huge piece of that. Not only, as we talked about in the previous panel, about moderating your time and managing your own time, but also reflecting on your learning. And as an educator, providing that time for reflection is very important, because that's how the kids say, oh, well, I think I did really well with this technology today because I was focused and on task, or this technology really distracted me today. I didn't use my time wisely. I don't have a lot of takeaway for this. But teaching the kids to be reflective and just to kind of be mindful about how they're using the technology and how the technology is helping or hindering their learning.
So I know you've done a lot of teaching of coding inside of the classrooms, Liz, and not everybody's a coder, but I do believe that everyone can benefit from the structural parts of learning how to code. Mm-hmm. How do you manage, all of you, but Liz, if you want to answer this first, meeting the children at where they're at? So some houses may have a lot more technology at earlier ages, so the kids by second or third grade are very adept at technology. Other houses keep it from them because they're terrified of it.
Yeah, so I think kids have an abundance of creativity, and in teaching them computer science, they learn problem-solving skills and new ways of thinking, and the earlier that students can get familiar with those ways of thinking through tough problems and piecing things together to form a bigger picture, I think the better. And that type of computer science thinking is difficult at first, but it gets easier over time. But since they come in with an abundance of creativity, where we can meet them is with the persistence. And how we can do that is we can say, so what are you interested in? Are you interested in fashion? Because there are ways to apply computer science to fashion. For example, there's Maddie Maxey. She's like a fashion entrepreneur. I think she's featured on YouTube, and she thinks that clothes that respond to your body temperature and they cool you off or heat you up based on how you're feeling are the way of the future. And she's had some really cool stuff on the runways where like dresses light up because it's darker in the room, or it's during the day so they're not lit up. So I think really catering to their interests and like using their creativity to sort of meet with the challenges of tougher ways of thinking and problem solving is really useful in getting kids engaged at whatever level they come in at. And there's an abundance of examples, whether kids care about fashion or kids care about community engagement and removing graffiti from around their community. There's all different examples of ways kids have successfully developed apps and made tutorials to teach other kids how to use computer science to cater their interests.
And one of the things that a lot of teachers are afraid of is, I don't know how to code. I can't do that. I can't teach my kids coding because I don't know how to code. And Google CS First has an amazing curriculum around. There's a fashion design one, there's a storytelling one, there's a video game design one, and it's all free curriculum that Google writes. And even though I can walk in and teach my kids how to code, I very often will have a club or a class use Google CS First, because it also teaches them how to learn for themselves. Like we talked earlier about watching YouTube to learn how to fix a washing machine or whatever you do. The Google CS First curriculum teaches them how to watch a video, to pause and do, and then go back and learn again. And it also teaches them the very valuable skill of tab switching, where, okay, you go to this tab, you watch the video, you pause it, you go to this tab in Scratch and you do it. Okay, now you go back to the video and pause it, you scrub forward, you scrub back. So really important learning skills to prepare them for college and for life. But it also allows classroom teachers who don't have any coding experience to provide some time and some scaffolding for students to learn how to code in a meaningful way.
Do you guys have any advice for those sorts of teachers who are kind of like scared of this brave new world that we've entered into, and like how they can either embrace it or slowly walk into the brave new world?
I have just one, which is, I think there's a lot of us who understand the new role of an educator is actually moving from teacher to coach. And there are a lot of teachers that are embracing the concepts of flipping the classroom. So I love it when I see a teacher say, what tools do you think would be best, and who in the classroom is an expert that could quickly get the class up to speed with something? That's another way, because you can use, that, but when you flip it also in a way that your students are the experts, I think you have incredible outcomes that can come from that. And then they manage the screen time because they're respectful, by the way.
Plus also, I think understanding that teachers don't have to master all the tools, and they just need to be familiar with them and get pretty good at one or two that are their preferred choice, and let the kids guide them in the ones that they like to, and then together come up with a good way of tackling different problems in the curriculum based on the tools available. And there's new stuff coming out all the time, and the kids are the ones that keep up with that, so the kids can propose different tools that they're using, new ones that came up, and the teachers may not even have, but the kids will tell them, look, this one you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's also okay, and it's hard for teachers, but it's also good for them to be comfortable to say it's okay that I don't know. It's okay to say you don't know, and it's even better to say let's learn together, and to model how you research, how you learn. I had a student ask me, I can't remember what it was yesterday, but they asked me some question. I was like, I don't know, and no one's ever asked me that question. Let's figure it out together. And so I opened up Google, and without pre-searching, I just did a really good keyword search, and we skimmed the results and just narrowed down, okay, these first three won't work, but this one has a good summary, let's click on it. So I modeled to them how to develop good keywords, how to do a quick search, and then how to learn the answers to the questions that they had.
What about, we talked a lot about tools that, and I feel like that's the first place that teachers and parents and everyone will go to, is like, is there a tool that can help me do this? Is there a video that can help me do this? Are there any kind of teaching practices or kind of ideologies or kind of ways of approaching it that you would recommend to people who are in this situation of managing screen time? Or managing screen time makes it sound like screen time's a bad thing, because but I mean, there are times when they don't need to be on the screen. So
I would say don't use it as a babysitter. Technology is not a babysitter. We don't like our parents to use technology as a babysitter, so you shouldn't do the same thing in the classroom. Classroom time is very valuable, and you don't want to squander it. But at the same time, being mindful of your curriculum and what's the outcome and the curricular goal you have for your students, and then deciding which technology tool to use or whether to use technology or not. So not using it as a babysitter, but also being mindful about your purpose and your outcome, and kind of backward designing your lesson. What do you want the learning outcome to be, and then how can I best leverage technology to reach that goal?
I think, like you mentioned, so troubleshooting is an essential skill. And if you're an educator, you likely have the ability to think creatively, reason systematically, work collaboratively, and troubleshoot. And if you can exercise creativity and those skills, you can teach students how to code. And like, kids like to share their creations, and I think just being collaborative and meeting them at your level and their level, and sort of being a leader and an advocate for them to help them troubleshoot and help them take the next step in learning what they want to do, and encouraging them that they can do it because you know that you can do it also because you have these basic skills is really important. I think it's just a yes attitude and a can-do attitude. It's really helpful.
I want to touch on something that I think a lot of people I know, because I work with at-risk youth in some of the schools that work with them, and a lot of the questions are, well, how do I know that every student is going to have the same access to technology or the same opportunities as any other student? And I just want to let you all know some statistics that are around that, because that is not a barrier that's going to exist. I would say in 5 to 10 years, that barrier is actually not going to exist at all. Roughly 85% of people in lower income communities have access to digital assets that also connect to the internet. There are laws in place, actually, though, that we can't do homework assignments that require use of digital technology. So as educators and thinking about managing screen time, we also have to remember that some of the stuff actually has to happen inside the classroom with the computers and our phones that are there during that time, just to make sure that we don't go apart from it. With that said, libraries provide computers, and a majority, 85% have access. So I just don't want anyone to let that be a hindrance to making online assignments. And that 85% is people who are actually below the poverty line. As we know, statistically, 78% of students in their 13+ years actually have a smartphone in the United States.
But no technology is going to surpass the capacity of sensory learning and interacting with the real world. And that is, there's so much information out there these days on how the brain works, how the brain learns, and our senses are really important. So I think that when we're thinking as parents, as educators of what curriculum, how we teach, using technology is fantastic, of course. At the same time, I limit a lot of access to my children, and when I speak with families, with teachers, because ultimately there is no way that technology can emulate the experience of going out and playing in a sandbox or physically interacting, smelling, hearing. So I think it's really important to never lose sight of the power and value of that.
What's a good way or a best practice on evaluating these methods and tools that you're using regarding technology?
Well, it depends on the age of the student. For older students, I often have a folder that I'll call coding, or I'll call the folder math, or I'll call the folder grammar, and I'll throw in maybe a half dozen apps that are educationally sound, and I'll ask the students, okay, this is what I want you to learn. I want you to learn parts of speech. Here are 4 different grammar apps. Which app would be best for you to use for homework or for center time? So narrowing it down and giving them a choice, but giving them a scaffolded, structured choice, not just go to the App Store and download some random grammar app. But here are 4 apps that I found on Common Sense Media that have good ratings, good educational value, less consumerism. Which one speaks best to you? And you might have 4 apps and 8 students, and three students say this app and 3 students say that app, and that's how they can customize their own learning as well. So as long as you're giving them a good choices, that way they can do that. For teachers, what I often do is refer them to Common Sense or some other app review sites. And using Twitter and stuff, crowdsourcing is a really great way to do it too. I have 2nd graders. I would like them to learn how to do 3-step addition, integrate apps, and put some hashtags on there, and you'll get some good answers.
I would say that I love your answer for how we could use educational technology. I think that's super smart, and I love the free choice with the students. If your question was revolving around how do we meet the students where they are using the tools that they're using, like how do I use Instagram in the classroom, or Twitter, or God forbid, Snapchat. I think that one of the best ways to do it is, again, having the students come up with ideas of how to leverage the tools that they're using for their own assignments, and also honing in on, and you've been using these words so much, and I love it, it's honing in on the fact of everything that you're creating digitally is a digital artifact that actually promotes who you are, your story, what your capabilities are. It proves your next step readiness. So what tools would you all like to use if we were looking at, whatever your assignment is, they will help you come up and craft the assignment. It's really cool because then they're into it. They've already bought into that assignment.
How would Romeo and Juliet communicate today?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good high school question.
And they get into rap songs. They're using YouTube or whatever they're using, but it's the excitement again. It's that messy, active learning that we love to see that kind of happens as a result of asking those questions.
Well, it's also it's a privilege. So if you have a really rowdy third period class that can't manage the technology, the Postit Notes work wonders. So it's a privilege. I'll let you, even as a parent, I'll let you do that, but I reserve the right to change my mind. You're showing me you can't manage this, so let's take a step back, and maybe we can earn the right again.
And I think a way that you can be an advocate for students who might be in the lower income bracket, or might not have as much access to technology, or who might be really excited to learn and really in a place where they're ready to learn and their classmates might not be, would be to start like a computer science club at your school. So anyone can do that, especially people like yourselves who are in classrooms working with children. There's curriculum online, and you can really be a game changer for a student in terms of introducing them to a potential career path that could be really rewarding for them down the road.
I think one of the things that we've covered a lot on are positive uses connected to curriculum and goals as far as that goes. We haven't really touched a lot on managing screen time that is self-initiated by the students that is not on task, like texting in class and calling people in class, or just like not paying attention because they're playing some new app, or they're on their app checking their FOMO problems and that sort of thing.
Teachers cannot sit at a desk in the front of the room and have students' devices open. Like, this is the worst setup in the world, the way we're set up right now. If I was a teacher giving a lecture, I can't tell what any of you are doing. You could all be checking Facebook right now. You could all be shopping for shoes and looking at Amazon, and I would not know as a teacher. So changing the setup of your classroom, the physical layout of your classroom is an important thing to do. If your students are on Chromebooks or laptops or tablets like the Surface here, set your classroom up in a way that you can see everything. You put your desk in the back of the room, or set it up in a horseshoe shape, or just walk around. You cannot just be stationary at your desk anymore. If your students have tablets or phones, it's a little bit trickier, but if you're constantly walking around, your presence is the most powerful tool you can use. If they know that you could walk by and look over their shoulder at any moment, they are much more likely to be on task. But really rethinking how you set up your physical environment to promote students using digital tools in a productive way. It might have to change. It changes the way you teach, and it changes the way you plan your physical environment, as well as structure your lessons. If you just say, we have a 45-minute class, write your paper, and then go sit at your desk, that's not going to be productive use of time.
And you talked a little bit earlier, Marcella, about the putting actually like a block on certain apps during certain times of the day.
Yeah. So with TeenSafe started as a monitoring tool, and that was what they've done for 5 or 6 years. And then about a year ago, they developed the pause button because they realized that you can monitor all day, but you can't monitor everything. And at the end of the day, kids they get bored. You can't, when they're in the classroom, when they're away from you. So this button is so cool. I wish I could demo it because, as a parent, and that's one of the reasons I want to come in. A lot of people don't know about that this is available, but all you do is you set it up, you connect it to the parent will connect it to their phone, and then the parent will schedule or physically just say, okay, you're in school, it's 9 o'clock, you're supposed to be in class. You literally pause it from your phone, and it shuts down all of the apps, and you can choose which ones it shuts down and which ones it doesn't. So it's amazing because the kid will still be able to call if they need to call, which is, for emergencies, but anything else is just unavailable.
Another great thing for teachers to use is screen sharing. So if you have like an Apple TV or something like that, and you can either do it on the board in front of the whole class on the smartboard, or just on your computer, have all of screen shares of all of their devices. So even if you're sitting at a desk or conferencing with a student, you can still glance at a monitor and see all of their screens. Not that you will sit there and stare at their screens the whole time, but the fact that they know that you can. So I can sit here and conference with a student and glance at a screen every 15 minutes or so, and students never know when I'm going to look, and so that encourages them to be more on task.
I just want to offer that all of these are important, but also empowering your students, because we shame them with technology. And I hate that we shame them, because when we look at tomorrow's jobs, they're going to have some basis in technology. So as they get older, we need to, I think, loosen the reins and give them the opportunity to succeed with technology. An effective tool that I've seen teachers use is they actually ask all of the students to put their phones on the desk face down. It's less monitoring, but honestly, you can quickly see if a student's checking their phone. And what I've seen also work is that the teacher says, and if you need to check your phone, I'm going to believe that you're needing to do this for an important reason. Maybe you're checking a fact that I've done, or maybe you're not. But then she or he can ask the student to share what they just found on their phone. But it's like trust. We have to trust our students at the same time.
Yeah, screens at 45 degrees is another big one. If I asked you quickly put your screen at 45 degrees, I can see turning around. Yeah, but if I'm lecturing you about something, or I want to take a break and get your attention, if I say put your screens at 45 degrees, I can quickly see that they're focusing their attention on me for a moment.
And they learn 45 degrees.
Yeah,
and they learn a math.
But
math
there
skill.
is, again, the brain. The brain is, we're training our brains with everything we do. So kids, even if at school, you're telling them to turn around the screen, if they go home and they're checking their phone all day and the parents aren't checking, literally their brain is learning and is requesting the signal, check your phone. And it literally, you're timing it. The brain will learn, okay, every 10 minutes I'm going to send the signal, check phone. Every 8 minutes, every 7 minutes, every 6 minutes. The kids are learning this at home, the weekends and all that. They come to school, now the teacher's like, well, now you can't check your phone at all. It's like, but the kids, like, the compulsion's there.
Yeah.
So the brain is telling them, must check. And I don't know if you guys have this as a parent. I struggle with this all the time. My kids come to me and they're like, Mom, put the phone down.
It's also
I tell the kids that I'm paying mortgage with this. So if you can pay your mortgage with what you're doing on Facebook, hey, talk to me.
Yeah.
Let me know. But
it's also a modeling thing. As teachers, we have to model learning. As parents, we have to model proper device management and device
That's where it
use.
starts.
Have a device parking place in your house where everybody plugs their devices in the second they walk in the door. And if you are going to go check your phone, it's a purposeful thing to walk across the room and check your phone. It's not just sitting on the couch next to you. It's really important to realize if you're using it as a consumption device or creativity device. Right. And so especially in the classroom, if your kids are just consuming things with the technology, why use it? Like, they can consume things in books and conversations. But if they're being creative, if they're using it as a tool and leveraging it for creativity, that's a whole different ballgame. I was not a fan of the iPad when it first came out as an educational tool because it was a consumption device, not a creativity device. Whereas now, even smartphones can be creativity devices if you leverage them correctly.
I think, instead of being doomsday and cynical, you can say, well, at least they're getting exposure to a good way of approaching technology when they're in your care. So if the 6-7 hours that they're at school for an elementary student, or 45 minutes if you're a high school teacher, and you're displaying the right way to do it, you're imparting some sort of wisdom upon them, I think if that's the only thing they get, then good. Let that be the only thing they get. I think giving into the overwhelming, if 23 hours a day they're not getting good guidance, but they're getting it while they're in your care, that's worth something, and it's worth, they'll remember that if they get into a situation, hopefully.
And they will learn that, like, during this period, this 1 hour or these 4 hours this is the behavior that I need to adapt to, because again, it's brain plasticity. The brain is knowing, okay, these are the parameters that I have to fall into when I'm here, when I'm there. So, okay, these 4 hours, my phone is on top, turned around, my computer's this way, so I cannot check social media. At least you're helping to decompress and deconstruct some of the other programming that they're getting at other times. And knowing that, for example, they do have the ability that I'm going to learn a program, but I also need to be able to disconnect when I have to disconnect. So having that balance, I think, is really key.
But the positive light is, this is the generation that is being dubbed as the next generation of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is on the rise. It only takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. Believe me, they're online for 10,000 hours. But I love it when my son, this is a personal story, comes up to me and says, oh my gosh, did you know blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, how did you just figure it? Like, he did card trips, magic card trips, because he came out and had spent time online about something he was passionate about. And just, the big circle back to education and educators. Our goal is just to make sure that our kids are thinking critically about the information that we're giving them. And if our goal is successful in math because we allowed our student to use Minecraft, or there's so many creative ways now, like learning with Duolingo or whatever. There's so many different ways out there. It's not because you're going to give technology that they're going to learn, and it's not because you're going to limit their time that they're going to limit themselves. I think it's just really, truly meeting them where they are, linking to the objectives, and giving them an opportunity to try.
I think we are at time, but thank you guys so much. I'm pretty sure we're all here the rest of the day, so please come and continue the conversation, have small conversations. But thanks so much, everybody.